What's up, everyone, and welcome to the live stream critique and edit. As you guys may have known, this was originally scheduled for last week, on last Tuesday, but because of all this current events that have happened regarding George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement, I thought it was not really relevant for me to be kind of crowding the airwaves of the internet to do any type of like photography related stuff, and I just wanted to in solidarity and support of the Black community and the education and awareness and the protests that were happening. That was kind of my decision to do that in order to support them. If you were following me on Instagram, I was taking some time to spread awareness and make some posts about kind of what my stance is. So I definitely do think that, now that I am resuming back with the live stream and the videos and Instagram posts, it doesn't mean that we're going to go back to business as usual. There is some progress, but at the same time, there is still a lot more change that needs to be done. So everyone, I encourage you to keep donating, keep educating yourself, keep having those hard conversations, and together we can make this world a better place. So with all that said, I did want to start getting into the photo edit and critique. So without further ado, I did want to first off thank Ben Hines for letting me use one of his Lego photos as the thumbnail for this live stream. So for the most part, I don't really have a game plan of how we're going to do this because some people edited their photos and some people didn't. So the people that did edit their photos, I'm just going to offer a quick critique. And for the people who did submit RAWs or photos that don't look like they're kind of edited, I'm going to go ahead and edit them and kind of take my kind of approach to how I would make that final photo. All right, so let's get started. So this first image here is from Ben Hines, and he has been making a lot of Lego photos. Definitely check him out on Instagram if you haven't already. Oops, let me close this real quick. So this is an awesome execution. Crazy technique here to get kind of like the rain droplets and whatnot. So that is awesome in itself, and also it's just a Lego photo, so I love Legos. But if there is one thing that I could change, I did not really, for me, I don't really like having some type of object in the center right here without having it balanced on the other side. So this Lego kind of lamp right here definitely splits the photo in the middle, but it's kind of unbalanced because there's nothing to look at on this side. So if I were to take this photo, I probably would have cropped it a little bit more this way just to balance it out a little bit more and kind of, let's see, kind of like right here. So basically when I do some types of compositions, I like to have the gaps on each side be the same. So the gap between this umbrella right here and the edge of the frame, kind of want to make it similar to the gap of this lamppost to this side. So I would have made it like this a little bit. So I don't know if I can do the before and after. I can't. Let's see. So here you can see, I mean, it's definitely, this does have an interesting look to it, but I do like to do a little bit to make the viewer of the photo do less work when they're looking at a photo. So this is why I would crop it this way. All right, so this next photo is from, my stuff is all going weird. Sorry guys. All right, from Brian Noble. Let me make sure I get the chat back up here. Let's see. So overall, it looks like it's kind of like a neighborhood shot, maybe taken just from your home. I definitely like the clouds. I think that was probably what he was trying to capture, and the clouds look crazy. I like to call them angry clouds, just a lot of texture and a lot of different tones in there, so that's pretty cool. But the one thing that kind of stood out to me first when I first looked at this image was I didn't really understand what this part was here. And it's not something you can really just crop out, because if you try to crop it out, then it gets rid of a lot of stuff. That's kind of better, but I wished whenever you're taking a shot, just think about what's also in the frame. So, and also what you want to keep out of the frame. I personally would have taken maybe 2 steps forward, or just tilted my camera just a little bit down and cut this off and taken it off. So because we can't do that, I'm just going to try to maybe crop it like 16:9:9 maybe. Could probably Photoshop the rest of this out right here. So I'm going to do that just to get this distracting part out of the way a little bit. And then also I think I'm going to just change the tilt. And then, so this is a RAW file, so we're going to do some RAW editing right here. And I think my initial game plan for this photo is really make the clouds stand out. I don't really think the houses were supposed to be what stands out. And if that was the case, it wasn't obvious to me. I personally, with this edit, I'm going to make the clouds stand out. So that's what we're going to take here. So first I'm going to apply my preset. That's just usually how I start everything. But I'm going to kind of increase the contrast a little bit. So I'm going to use this color fade 5 right here. So basically what that's doing is going to get this black point right here. It's going to drop it down. So click that one, it's going to drop it down and bring the blacks into the photo a little bit more. Then put in some clarity right here and bump up the contrast to get a little bit more texture in the clouds. And we're going to reduce the exposure just a little bit so that we can get some texture back in here. Let's see, and change the temperature a little bit. Okay. Cool. Okay, so I might warm it up just a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is use a graduated filter to just draw more attention to the center of the frame. And I can show you all how that actually looks afterwards. So basically that's what it's doing. It's just doing a subtle bringing the eye to the center where the clouds are. And I will admit, it is a little difficult for me to edit photos with this bright light in my face. So if the photos are looking like too dark or too bright, it's probably that's the reason why. Cool. Awesome. So in this case, again, Brian, if you're watching this or if you're watching this later, I would just really just try to make sure you pay attention to things that are kind of creeping into the frame, unless that was intentional, and make sure to basically, again, just keep in mind of what you're doing so that we don't have to bring it into Photoshop to edit it out. And unfortunately, I typically would bring it into Photoshop, but because of the time and I do want to get through all these photos, I won't do that here. So moving along, we have a photo from David, and we have these kind of like DJ setup right here. And overall, when I'm looking at it, I do like the vibe. I do like the colors of the photo, and it's a lot of cool, interesting textures and lights and whatnot. But I do think that I don't really know what the focal point of the image is. So if I had to do some type of critique, I would kind of define that either with the framing or with your focus on what the focus of the image should be, whether it's the computer screen or this beat pad or whatever. To me, the thing that stands out the most right now is this stick thing here, and I don't think that's like the sharpest thing in this photo. Yeah, so I think I would have maybe focused this on here or on the turntable. So next time, just pay attention to where you're kind of focusing and pick that focus point intentionally. So let's try and start editing this here. I don't know if I'm going to want to make it color or black and white. When you edit colors like this, it gets a little dicey because of all the different color temperatures, but let's try it. Let's see. This was taken with the XT2 and the 23mm 1.4. As far as how many photos I'm trying to edit, I basically took one photo from everyone who submitted a photo. Some people submitted like 5 or 6 images, but I just picked one. Hopefully I can quickly get through everybody's photo. Then we can go back and do some more. Cool. All right. So here I was just playing with the exposure and the contrast a little bit. Overall, the exposure looks pretty good from the beginning after I put my preset in there. And I do, normally people would try to correct the tint and whatnot, but I like it kind of how it is already. I feel like the purple is accurate to the party vibe, so I'm just going to drop in graduated filters again, something that I always do just to draw the eye into the photo and kind of give some focus. And one thing is, I do think this is a little distracting, and I normally wouldn't do something like this, but I might try to just like brush it out a little bit and just darken it. Oop, sorry, not the auto mask. Let's see. And just to try to make that guy in the back there not as distracting. Kind of a sloppy job, so I would definitely do that more carefully. But you can kind of get the idea. That way right now, if you just kind of like look away and take a quick glance at the photo, now you can really look at this laptop. But before, I really feel like these two guys back here are kind of distracting from the image. So always keep in mind what is behind your subject, as well as in front of it, on the sides. Always pay attention to everything around you. That way you can get a really solid image. Okay. So this one, I feel like this is a film photo. I'm not sure, because I think it's a scan of some sort. Well, it looks like it's film. So I really like how there is the kind of background interest here, and there's a cool flare going on. I do think it is a little bit softer, but it could be a film photo, it could just be like a vintage lens, so I'm not sure. I think if I were to give any critique on this photo, I would try to kind of do a little bit better balancing of the frame, maybe have this part of the flower a little bit lower, and the person's face kind of a little bit higher. It's kind of hard to distinguish like which one you should be looking at. But overall, I think it's a very cool and like abstract, interesting image. And Eleni actually gave quite a bit of cool looking images. I just want to show you guys. So she had some, I think she's shooting with film. I'm fairly certain, but these ones have a lot of like cool dust and grain on it. That's pretty awesome. So kudos on taking these very interesting shots with these cool texture. Oh, it's a filter. It looks like it's film. Like if you actually, I think the filters that you use are based on like film shots, like analog film. So that's usually what these are. These are like dust and scratch marks from scanners. If you just added that on top, you fooled me because I thought it was shot with film. So cool. All right. So moving on to this one was submitted by Fabian, and I know this is some type of landmark in like Europe, I believe, but it's eluding me. So if somebody wants to in the chat tell me which the place this is, but he submitted a raw file, so we're gonna do a little bit of editing on this one. I if I could critique it a little bit, I would say is I would have probably wanted less sky, and just because it dominates almost like a third of the image. And then also, if you could have somehow gotten a little bit lower, you probably already like really, really low, but it would be cool if these people right here, if their heads were inside this thing. You're very, very close, and you probably could have got it if you scooted up to like in the middle of the street here. But I'm not sure if that was accessible or something even realistic to do. But just keep in mind and keep looking for those cool, interesting frames, because you got them right in the middle of the photo, but it would be cool if their heads were inside here. Okay, so first things first, I did want to just straighten this photo out just a little bit, and then probably make the whatever you call this tunnel thing in the middle. And also, one other critique is I wish this lane divider was kind of like in the middle of the photo here. So if you sidestep like right, maybe one step, it probably would have got the line going straight down the middle of the shot, which would be pretty cool. I don't know if you actually submitted one that looked like that. Maybe you did. Yeah, this one is like closer, but you were kind of standing up taller, so. We're going to go back to this one right here. And because he shot this in RAW, you can see already it like recovers a lot of the texture and tones in the image. So that's pretty awesome. So we're going to bring this out just a little bit. And then basically I'm going to just try to work and like recover some of the highlight data back here at the top, and then also draw the eye in a little bit more here. And with these graduated filters, they kind of just like stack them on, kind of like layers. Instead of adjusting the value, I just kind of add them on and on. Cool. And then if I were you, I'd probably post this on Instagram, so it'd be a 4:5 crop. So I guess this would help a little bit with some of that negative space. Cool. Let's play with the white balance just a little bit and see if that changes much. All right. Cool. All right, so this is kind of what I would do here. Just adjust the sharpening just a little bit. I haven't been doing that with the other ones. But yeah, it's pretty cool cap. Did you know these people? Because they're kind of like looking. But sweet. All right. So this next photo was submitted by Henry Warren, or Hendog Warren, on Instagram. First things first, again, I just want to, this is a super cool portrait. I like the sunglasses. I like the cool jewelry. Not sure if you're traveling or if this is where you're from, but this is a really cool like street portrait. And I do think you're like in the shade with the daylight. So lots of great light coming in here, directional soft light. I would just caution everyone again, just look at the framing of your images and always pay attention to your subject and how they interact with the edge of the frame. Because here his elbow has like this much gap, and then here it's like almost crossing it over. I would prefer that if you just turn the camera to the left a little bit. That way this would have been balanced. So I wish there was a little bit room for his elbow here to have some room. In order to balance that out now, I'd have to like crop it this way, which I wouldn't really want to do, but in order to get his face in the center, that's probably what I have to do. So here we're gonna edit this. What camera is this? Okay. Don't like how that one looked. Cool. So this one I'm gonna do a little bit grittier. Looks like a street portrait. In here I'm just adjusting. I always try to adjust the exposure, shadow, and highlights kind of in tandem. Never really know what direction you're going to go until you get them all working together. A lot of you guys are using a 23mm 1.4. Cool. Yeah, this one is looking super nice. I like this one. Oh, it's at the beach. I can see that you're kind of like something out here. Yeah. Good job on this photo. I like this portrait a lot. And then just finishing up the sharpening adjustments right here. Cool. Thanks for submitting that. All right. So here, looks like we have like a vacation or portrait of some sort. I want to say maybe the Grand Canyon. They're pretty solid. This is pretty solid, just kind of, portrait of you at a landmark. But I would say that in this case, I think this is a JPEG already. One critique I would have is to try to shoot in the direction of the light. So if the lighting is coming from either the back or like the right side right here, if the person with the camera would have kind of rotated to the right a little bit more, you might have been able to get a little bit more light in their faces. But at the same time, because you guys, the subject is in shadow, you can't really see the background at all. And I think that was part of the point you're trying to capture is the background. And because it's a JPEG, you can't really recover too much of what's back there. I mean, you can kind of see it a little bit, but there's not much I can do as far as the editing goes for this. So one thing I would give you a tip is next time when you're taking a photo like this and you don't know what to do as far as the exposure and you can't revisit the place again, take a quick bracketed photo. So take 2 stops underexposed, 2 stops overexposed, and then one that's metered correctly. That way you have stuff later on to look back to, and maybe you could pick a better one later on. But here it did seem like you did have to recover the highlights and the shadows quite a bit, so it gives this kind of like gritty, almost like HDR look to it, which is fine if that's the style that you're looking for, but I personally tried not to do that. So definitely consider bracketing and seeing if it gives you better results next time. Alright, so here we have like a desert portrait from HT Moment. And then first things first, this is a really cool like area landscape, and looks like a fashion type portrait. But the one thing I do notice is let's see, it's kind of I think the one thing I would kind of fix a little bit on this photo is kind of like the posing. So first she's kind of going like uphill a little bit. It might have been better if she was just maybe leaning up a little bit more. That way she has a little bit of like bend in her legs. And also I think because the lighting is coming from the left side, if she just turned her head over her right shoulder just a little bit and started looking this way, it would have had a nice effect on her face. And I think you did it in one of the other photos that you submitted. Here you see how the lighting is coming from the right and her face is lit that way. I wish you had done that for this one as well, because this one had a cool, interesting type of pose and shot. But definitely make her look that way. That way you have the lighting landing on the correct spot. All right. So this one is submitted by Jaime Gonzalez. Looks like it's like a street photo. And it doesn't say what camera it is. I think this is shot with film. I'm hoping this is shot with film because the grain looks pretty legit. All right. So here, one thing that's kind of standing out is, one, this just looks crazy. I don't know if this is like a COVID-19 photo or something. But I would just keep in mind and watch your horizon lines and the straight lines, because this one is just a little distracting. I wish it was more kind of like that. This is something you can also use this tool in Lightroom, which basically will help you straighten out some lines. You kind of just pick a few vertical and horizontal lines, and it will kind of like help you to straighten everything out. So this one looks a little bit distorted, but you kind of get the idea. So basically it's kind of like, it looks like the building's kind of like leaning away from the computer screen here, but then if you kind of fix it, it's kind of coming towards you. So make sure to hold your camera kind of straight. But I do like the moment that you got here. Like, it's a super interesting moment. Like, this guy, I don't even know, is pushing a cart with this crazy thing on his face, and you got the store as a background. So really cool shot. Definitely keep an eye on your exposure a little bit. Make sure you don't blow out too much highlights here. I feel like if you're able to underexpose just a little bit, you would have got more texture. But overall, this is a solid shot. I really like the black and white take on this one. All right. So this next photo is from Jake Campa, and it looks like it's this crazy like looking night scene. I really like this almost like endless looking street lamp here with the hazy halo around the lights, so that's pretty cool. And I know this is JPEG, but I did want to see if I can edit it just a little bit. Get rid of that. I finally got rid of it. Okay. Yeah, not too much data left in here, but I would, if I were to shoot this, I would have kind of like scooted over to the left just a little bit. That way these lines were like all in a row, or scooted out to the left this way a little bit so that it was more of a diagonal line, because it's kind of like almost a straight line, but almost not a straight line. So for me, I always wanted to be one extreme or the other. So try something like that next time, because you can't even really straighten it out to kind of fix that. And I would just crop in a little bit tighter as well. Let's see. We have a little bit less empty space. There you go. Cool. Yeah, but this one is a super solid shot. Shooting with a 16mm 1.4, which is my favorite Fujifilm lens, so that's awesome. And then it says this way to something. Yeah, good job on this one. I really like the edit, the cools versus the warm tungsten lights here. All right, so this one is submitted by Jacob Jenis, or hopefully I'm not butchering your name. But also, if you're wondering why I have it with white, I usually edit with a white background because before night mode existed, that was how Instagram had a background that's white. So when you're editing your photos, be sure that you don't want the edge of your frame to blend in with the white background of Instagram or wherever you're posting. Most websites that you post photos on are white. So that's why I do that. That way, when I edit it, I can make sure to have some contrast. So when I do edit, I'm going to try to make this distinction a little bit more. So this looks like it's some type of either temple or palace or landmark. I do like this cool light sunflower, sunstar going on right here. And then let's see. I think if I could improve it a little bit more, I would either have gone up closer to the building and had it just smack dab centered, or get a little bit lower. Like, don't be afraid to get a little bit lower. That way we can see these tiles a little bit more, kind of leading into the building or the temple or palace or whatever it's called. So let's go and try to edit this, and we're gonna, my overall game plan is try to bring back some of this sky right here, and just overall give this more some bring up the shadows a little bit more and bring some contrast in the photo. So XT30. Alright, so this one's already pretty bright, so we're gonna bring down the highlights a little bit more, that way we can get this down. You're gonna see it's already getting better. Alright. And then I'm also going to bring down the white point to probably like -25. And then now you can see that there's a clear distinction between the background. Probably even if we bring it down more. It's just something that I always do to make sure that it doesn't just straight up blend in with the background. Now you can see there's more details out and all this stuff right here. But because we brought up the shadows and brought down the highlights, there's some contrast loss, so we're going to pump up the contrast a little bit and then raise these shadows. Exposure. Warm it up right here. Just drop in our graduated filter. Cool. Awesome. It's definitely better. I do think I'm kind of weirded out with the tilt of the photo, but I think it's just based on where you're standing. And then if you were going to post this on Instagram, I probably would have done something like that. But then again, it's sometimes if you use the auto function on here, nope, didn't do anything. Sometimes it does a trick, but in this case, it's not. But yeah, overall, this is a pretty solid photo of this palace or temple, whatever you call it. And good job on exposing the raw to have the detail still all intact. Let's see, using OS lens. Also, when you do a lot of lifting in the shadows, be sure to just check out and make sure there's not much noise that you brought into the photo. So here, just adjust the sharpening a little bit. Cool. Cool. All right, so this is a portrait by Jody Weiser. And so right here we are looking at a little girl holding some little flowers, it looks like. I can't zoom in that much more. Okay. So here I really like the photo, and I do think it's very cute and a great moment. I'm sure this is a really good memory for you. But one thing that I would do personally, if I was taking this photo, is I would have just centered her up. There is a time and place to use rule of thirds, but if there's nothing interesting at all on this side, I don't think it's called for. So I would have just centered it up and pointed your camera to the left just a little bit more. And also, I think one thing I would have tried in addition to this shot is have her hold out the little flowers just out toward the camera a little bit more. And then you could have focused really close on it and then maybe had her kind of in the background blurred out. That would have been something to try too. But personally, I think this photo calls for something that could be in black and white. So I actually want to try to edit it in black and white and see how that goes. And this is a JPEG, but you can actually use my presets on JPEGs if you want to. Sometimes you just have to increase the contrast a little bit more to get everything looking right. So here I'm just trying to like bring up the shadows in her eyes a little bit. Let's see. And I'm just trying to draw in the eye a little bit toward this flower. And that was the radial filter. Yeah, that's kind of like my take on it, just because I think I do like the rainbow headband or hair tie thing. I think this one gives a little bit more focus to the flowers and her face. And again, if you can, just point the camera and have her centered up. And I'm a big proponent of not doing the rules of thirds and always defaulting to centered if you can. That's just how I go about doing things. If you have any questions as I'm editing through these things, just feel free to drop it in the chat. Alright, so this next photo was submitted by Justin Blay. I really like this. This very moody edit. He did submit the raw photo with this. But where is it? I thought he did. I think here something that I would have done was probably cropped in a little bit more here. And probably I would have tried to get to a point where you can make this stack right here look a little bit taller. So I think that would mean getting a little bit closer to this, stepping forward a little bit more. I do like that you have this frame and then it's almost dead smack in the middle. That's awesome. And I do like the colors that you shifted the photo to, because it was just pretty much blue gray. So that was something that I like that you did here. But again, it's one of those things where unless you're just trying to do a play on lines and shapes, give the eye something to look at. And in this case, there's this cool stack, but it's kind of crowded around by these trees. So if you stepped a little bit closer and got lower, you could probably get this smokestack to look a little bit taller and be kind of closer to that part in the frame. So that's something that I would have probably tried. I'm sure you guys are trying to take different types of photos, so I encourage you, once you get that shot that you like, take more of them. Go closer, go further, get lower, hold your camera up high. That way you can get a variety of options as you're doing things. So we got 5 more to go here. Let's see. So this is from Luis Patricio. Luis Patricio Photography, and he has what it looks like an engagement photo. And first of all, I do like the kind of lighting here, and you'll see in a little bit, I think he shot it in RAW, so we should be able to get it back. But nice even lighting, basically just the backlit with the shadow on this side. If I did have to critique a little bit, if you look at one of my Instagram posts about the X factor, you can see that they're both just looking straight at each other. If you draw a line from basically their ear to the nose, I can even just draw it in here with the color. But if you just draw a line from the ear to nose, you can see that they're both parallel. The key to getting a photo to look natural is to get the X factor and kind of like make those two lines cross. So if you had just gotten them to tilt their heads kind of closer together, it probably would have been a little bit more of a natural looking shot. So also his arm kind of looks a little bit stiff, so definitely have them pull each other in closer, like there's a gap in between their hips right here. When I take a photo of what looks like an engaged couple or somebody that's, you know, married, you want them to be as close as possible. So have her reach that arm all the way around and pull him in, and then have him kind of like nuzzle and bring her head closer to his face by pulling her closer around the neck right here. Hopefully that makes sense. So here we're going to just start editing a little bit. Basically what my goal is, I'm trying to bring out the shadows and also just play off the backlight here. Oops, that's not the one. All right. I'm going to warm it up a little bit more here. See. You know what? I'm also going to try a black and white edit too, just to see what that would look like. Yeah. So the one thing is, if you're trying to go for a silhouette, I would also just try to make sure to get some more, get a little bit lower so you can have more of the bright spot behind their head. Because when I'm editing this, I'm not sure if you're trying to go for a silhouette or like a well exposed photo, because you could go for a silhouette like this, but at the same time I wish they would have a more interesting shape, like having their heads a little bit closer together. So, but he did submit some other great photos as well. Other wedding photos like this one and these ones. So thanks for submitting this one. Cool. So moving along, let's edit this photo from Michael Morecamp. Not sure if this is a self-portrait or of somebody. It's already edited, and I do like this cool blurry background part here. Let's see, it doesn't have any EXIF, so it does look like he is like slightly blurry. So I would say just make sure your subject, if they're kind of aware, to make them stand a little bit more still. And one thing I would have done is kind of like shimmy over to the left just a little bit more, so you can have this guy's head like be right in this gap right here, because I don't really like that it's getting cut off. I want it to be a little bit less distracting to have his head right here. That way all the lines would be perfectly kind of like pointing at this like empty area where his head is. Let's see. But yeah, I do like the leading lines. The colors are cool. Just again, as I'm showing, consistent theme across all these photos is just pay attention to what's behind and in front of your subject, as well as how they're interacting with the edges of the frame. Okay, so this one is submitted by Robin, and it looks like some buildings. I'm not sure what city this is in. Might be in Chicago, I think. I'm not sure. Definitely, I do like the sense of scale of this photo. The one thing that I noticed first is everything seems like it's kind of leaning to the right. So I think the JPEG, yeah, is kind of like just fix the lines here. So even if you just go in Lightroom and you just press, oops, just press auto right here, it fixes it right up. So definitely take advantage of all these cool little nifty features in Lightroom. Right there. And then, let's see. And then also what I'm trying to do here is kind of have this gap between the sky and this building kind of be equal to this side. So here we have like a little sliver right there, so we can get this closer. That cuts into the water a little bit too much, so I'll back it off right there. So just fixing the composition right now, and then we can try and edit this a little bit. Let's see. Where is my other preset? Nope, that's too much. Okay. Just gonna edit a little bit more and just add some contrast back in here. Again, this is a JPEG, so don't feel like you can't use these presets on JPEGs, because you can. And since the building's kind of like the main focal point of this photo, I'm just gonna bring the graduated filters in from here. Cool. Kind of what we did here. So overall, it was already a good shot to begin with, but we just kind of fixed this kind of like leaning of the building right here. This photo was submitted by Russell Van Biazen. Looks like some type of like cultural hat. And while I do like that the focal point is this hat, and I really like the texture and the colors of it are really nice too. Looks very like matte or muted and film-like. I would want a little bit more, what you call like headroom on this side. So if you scooted back a little bit and just give us a little bit more perspective on what's on this side, or capture two people at the same time, like this person back here, I think it definitely would have made it stronger. Just because some of the stuff is cut off, so I'm feeling like I want a little bit more context. But this one is a good shot, and I do like, again, like the texture of everything, and it's interesting to me. I want to know more about this event. So you could also try to shoot with a kind of like a wider perspective. It looks like this is done with a cell phone, so this is pretty cool. I couldn't even tell that it was a cell phone shot. So good job, Russell, and thanks for submitting this one. Uh-oh. And then, sorry if I mispronounced it. This one's submitted by Shah Zaib. And it is a portrait, and I really like the portrait because it is some good lighting. It's got some backlighting here, and I'm just fixing the crop just a little bit, and I do like the pose. He or she submitted a few photos, and this one I selected because this was the best pose, I think, so I want to help you work on your best photo that you submitted. I would, again, just keep in mind in the background, if this was intentional, I would have at least, it looks like there's a plant on this side and this side. Have the guy scoot over just a little bit to the left so that the plants are kind of bordering him on each side the same. And because it was back a little bit, there is a little bit loss of contrast, so I'm going to add some contrast back in here. And then maybe just put a graduated filter just from coming in from the top. Oh, not this one. Cool. I'm glad you learned a lot, Jody. Let's see. Yeah, so this one's looking pretty solid right there. And then since I think Jody is on here, I'm going to go in and edit one more photo since you're here. with me watching. So let's go take a look at the photos that you submitted, and we can do a little critique of that. Okay. I like this one. A lot of sass. So I did want to kind of, when I was looking over your photos earlier, I did want to kind of just encourage you to get down a little bit lower so that we can see the subject's eyes. So if you could have scooted down a little bit and get a little bit more on their level, always keep that in mind so that we can see their emotion, see what they're looking at, or at least see their eyes. It's something that you could have done for a few of these shots. Especially this one right here. I wish you were down a little bit more, if that's possible. If you can just like get down on the kids level, that way it looks like they're almost like bigger and you're in there with them. Definitely, this one's definitely cute though. So again, like I said before, just watch the frame, borders of the frame. So if we can get that a little bit closer and then get down a little bit more, that would have been a really awesome shot. Cool. So pretty much just 5 minutes left. So for those of you, if you stuck with me, thank you so much for sticking around. Hope you learned a lot. I also did want to let you guys know that for those of you who are interested, I do have a Fujifilm photography boot camp. Basically, it's an online course that I'm putting out. And if that's something that you're interested in being a part of, I can show you guys the website right here. I do a little plug for it, but if you are interested, I have a closed beta pre-enrollment for the class. So if you want to kind of level up your photography, go from just a Fujifilm camera owner to actually being a intentional photographer who can do manual exposure, edit your photos, and actually know the entire process from beginning to end, from setting up your camera all the way to sharing your photos in the best way possible. I have the pre-enrollment going on right now, so if that's something that you'd like to know about, DM me on Instagram at ReggieBPhoto, and I will send you the link. Otherwise, I'm making the link public on both YouTube and Instagram tomorrow morning. So again, thanks everyone for joining on this live stream critique and edit. Hope you guys learned something, and hope to do more of these in the future. So that's it for me. Remember to get out, go shoot, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.